Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Andrew, and today, very excited for episode 6 of Breaking into Cyber. I am so happy to introduce Alissa Gilbert, aka the DNS Princess. She is a hacker and a cybersecurity professional with over a decade of experience in offensive security, wireless assessments, and threat analysis. She knows for turning complex technical challenges into actionable solutions, mentoring others in the field, and always staying ahead of the curve. Whether it's creating challenging, traversing networks, analyzing the stars, or helping others, Alissa brings clarity, confidence, and deep expertise to the table. Alissa, super excited to have you on the channel. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Nice to be here.
Is it crazy, like when people have to introduce you and you think like, man, that's me. I've done all those things, or I've built this kind of story of who I am, and like now this is like I know you've done B-side chats and other conference talks, and you get to hear those bio speakers of like your kind of like background. Does it ever kind of like shock you, like, man, I've done all those things, or how does that make you feel?
It's always super weird because on one hand it's like I I did do those things. That is true, but I'm just Alyssa, so I don't think too much into it until someone points it out.
Well, so glad to have you here and your expertise. And obviously, you've been doing this for so long. First question we kind of have for you that kind of brings a lot of folks to the channel that are trying to break into cyber is sometimes cybersecurity is not the first choice of a career that people wake up to want to do. Like, I want to be a police officer. Some people want to be firefighters, nurses. Was there any kind of pivoting moment maybe in your career process that, like, you know what, this is definitely what I do, and you definitely have a passion for it?
hmm Yeah, I definitely pivoted at several different times. Um, I think for a lot of us, we started out in our childhood hacking, just doing random things. Never really thought of that as a career back in the 2000s. But when I had to make a decision on my first job in university, I picked IT, and that was just like your typical IT support job. And I knew the security department existed. I wanted to go pursue that further, but then I shifted back, was doing traditional like blood spatter forensics,
Oh,
like
cool.
crime scene forensics. And then Dr. Rogers came in and talked about digital forensics, and I just like honed in super hard. Differ led me to offensive security, and that's why I have such a broad background. So I've been flip flopping for a long time until I decided this is what I want to do.
Very cool. And that's so funny having it. I've gotten to talk to a lot of folks here in the last few years of like, kind of like what got them into cybersecurity. And it kind of just really kind of stems off the whole process of breaking into cyber. Like, you don't have to be like 100% in, like, I'm going to be an IT guy, I'm going to be a red hat, a hacker, or a defense, purple team, DLP. I've talked to folks that have been preachers. I was a police officer. You were in like forensics, like doing blood spatter stuff. And then like, you know what? Cyber seems pretty cool, and that interest kind of dived you into it and then really kind of got you started. That's really cool. I find that a cool piece that a lot of folks that think like, well, I don't know if I can get into cyber. I'm like, well, because you didn't start in cyber doesn't mean you can't end in cyber.
Yeah, and I actually don't recommend a lot of people jump in right at the start. If that's the opportunity that's been afforded to you because you've gone to university for it or you have a mentor, that's great. But cybersecurity requires so much background knowledge, so many foundations that I actually believe you should start just anywhere else before you start directly into cybersecurity, even if that's just doing a year or two in support, or even like something completely non-cyber at all, like policy and history and anything to get you started before you build upon it into cybersecurity. But for some people, they just dive right in.
Yeah, and it's funny because like myself, even like when I got my first job over at the state, my boss made a comment one time. He's like, "Man, Andy, like cops make the best analysts." I'm like, "Well, what do you mean by that?" It's like, "Well, like first off, you know how to write reports. You have to write to a judge understandings, but then you also have to write to a jury of 12. Some might have doctorates, some might have degrees, some might have GEDs, some might have no education at all. And you have to brief it at a high level understanding and then also kind of like a low level of that technical and non-technical kind of like case of what happened, and everyone needs to make sense of it." And just like you said, kind of having that outside experience of not being in cybersecurity immediately gives you a little bit of that life experience, kind of like being a good employee. I mean, obviously everyone says like, oh, you start at help desk, but there's also a lot of true reasons of why help desk is a really strong foundational start. You're working on communication skills, you're working on writing up basic cases, you're getting a good plethora of like random cases of what people are calling in for that maybe it's within your scope, maybe it's not within your scope. You're initially going to troubleshoot like you would on any situation, whether it's a pen test, whether it's working a case, whether it's doing audits, there's always that standardized and systematic process you have to go down and kind of go through. And sometimes having that first pivoting job before you get into a role is really a big help, just like you mentioned.
Yeah, I definitely think some underrated skills maybe are reading and report writing. I think it's underestimated how much writing you have to do in the field. So,
Yeah, pack people that think I want to be a pen tester and type the keys and say, "Hey, I'm in." What they don't know is after those 5 or 10 keystrokes, there's a 10 to 15 page penetration test report you have to provide of all the things you're able to do.
yep.
So with that fun 5 minutes of fun, there's the 15, 25 minutes of writing everything that happened, documenting screenshots, the IOCs and IOAs that you're able to pull, and that evidence you're able to pull from whatever you were doing. And I think just like you said, like that and soft skills, I think can also go a little bit under the radar when it comes to being able to hold the conversation. There's a lot of analysts that aren't comfortable kind of standing up and talking to a CEO or an ISSO, maybe on a process or an event that happened, having to communicate this with other teams. So 100%, there's some additional skills I think that are very strong and good base fundamentals that should also be stacked up against like certifications in education,
Hmm.
which lines up to a next question. Certifications, education, experience. What's your opinion when it comes to going through like the CompTIA triad, hitting up SANS classes, CCNA, CISSP? Like, what do you think are some strong fundamentals, maybe of if you want to go the certification route, maybe some strong certifications to start into,
Hmm.
or outside of that, like if there's even just some like which there's plenty nowadays, but just trying to go off on like I always say like a more cost friendly self learning journey to get into this kind of field.
Well, if to start with the end of it, for the cost perspective, there's actually a lot of free resources now. While the certifications might not be free, the knowledge within them, the trainings are usually free. There's plenty of them. I've seen a lot of popular LinkedIn lists and things like that that really hone into specific resources. But you have to keep in mind, I'm a PhD dropout, so I'm like addicted to school. I love school. But myself, I don't have a ton of certifications because, kind of like you pointed out, I would have to self fund them. But I do really like them for people who need that stepping stone or even just that confidence boost. The certification doesn't matter so much on paper as it does to the person who's holding it.
Definitely.
So yeah, it might be an HR checklist. It might be something like that. Everyone should get the Security Plus.
I call that
It's
the gate. That's like your gateway cert into cybersecurity is your
it
Sec Plus.
is.
Everyone's like,
Yeah.
marijuana is your gateway drug. Don't worry, YouTube, I'm not promoting that. But like when people think about cybersecurity, it's just like, oh, you need to get Sec Plus, which we'll pivot to another question after that because I kind of feel that's elevated to CYSA, but I'll let you finish your thoughts.
Yes. No, actually, that's what I was about to say. I recommend
Mm-hmm.
the CYSA more, especially because if you want to do the job or the actual occupation, the CYSA sets you up more for that.
Exactly. Yeah.
It has log analysis and different timeline things you need to know and understand. So it really does help with the job. But if you need to get like your very foundation in, I recommend the Security Plus. I actually do a very specific program with mentees to get their Security Plus. So that's personally where I start everyone at. Um, it's affordable. There's so much material online. Um, I have to give credit where credit is due. Professor Messer, I
Yep.
think, owns half the space. So
Yeah.
it's a really good starting point.
I was watching his videos when I worked on mine. I was actually in Kuwait on a deployment for the military when I got my Security Plus, and exactly that. I'm like, I need some free resources. And my buddy's like, oh, dude, check out Professor Messer on YouTube. He does a whole slew of series and stuff, and just subliminal listening. And then at night, I'd like listen to it. There's questions at the end, and yeah, it's like you said. There's like phone apps. Like I use Pocket Prep. I'm a huge fan of Pocket Prep, and so I'll use Pocket Prep and. You can pay for it, but you can also use like a free version of it too, and like get sort of and as in everything, there's always paywalls in some applications, but just like you said, there's also tons of free resources on YouTube and other sites you can go find like great pipelines to learn this stuff.
Absolutely.
So leading into, I guess, I'm glad. Well, actually, before we go to that, I'm so glad that you also agree with the CYSA piece of it. I think in the last probably I think 2-3 years, so I'd say about 5 years ago, roughly, I think Sec Plus was that baseline that when you were trying to break in, Sec Plus kind of was the where that had to be, but where everything's been moving to and kind of like the up pace of like attacks and events and logs and everything else that people are wanting when they put out these job recs for their unicorns. I think CYSA, especially for folks trying to break in with no experience, holding a Security Plus and CYSA can put you a little bit more above the, hey, look, they don't have the maybe hands-on experience what we're looking for, but they hold their CYSA, which is the Cybersecurity Analyst certification, that's showing that you're going through logs, you're doing that you're working events, you know how to work a phishing email, you know how to communicate, you know how to do a basic report. And I think it puts you that, I think a lot of companies are putting that now as that new baseline.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's super underrated though. If you're going to go with the CYSA and the Sec Plus, you know, CompTIA has these stackable certs where when you get more than one, you get an additional title. And the Net Plus is so underrated. Networking skills are so underrated. So if you're going to get one or two, just add that one in the bucket. There's a lot of cross content, a lot of overlap, but the skills in the Net Plus are super foundational, super important. Half the job, and I mean, if you can't understand how the internet works, how
Yeah.
are you supposed to do it? So um, get the stacking certs if you can. If you can't, or certs aren't your game, home labs are really my next strongest recommendation. Even if it's just a crappy laptop you got at a junk store and you put some VMs on it and get some, you know, old school networking hardware, that hands-on practice and the ability to answer questions like, well, what have you done? Even if you haven't done it in a job, you've done it before.
Exactly.
Done it in a different way. So home labs are super important, especially if you're not going to go down the cert route.
Yeah, and even my mentors when I was going through the pipeline, it's just like, hey, build your own home lab, work on VulnHub, download those vulnerable boxes, and just like get root, write a report on it, understand how and what you're doing. I think there's so much now when it comes to, just like you said, like the certification's great and all, but if you can't talk on the certification, and I mean, CompTIA is great, but it's a multiple choice question. I'll tell you right now that talking to another one of the folks I talked to on my network, I've never come across when I'm trying to maybe brute force an IP or a login password where it gives me, hey, you have four choices. A, fall 2024. B, summer 2025. You don't get a multiple choice when it comes to actually doing the activities or the training that you've learned from the training of it, right? So, but they said that and it just made me laugh. I'm like, man, that's a funny way to kind of like break down. Like the certifications are great, but you're not going to come across a multiple choice problem during this kind of time working these kind of things.
Can I evangelize something really quick about the CompTIA exams?
Full send.
It is so underrated, the objective sheet that they give out, where it has like bullets and then terms, bullets and terms. Those bullets actually describe how those terms will be asked on the test. So
Oh,
the ones that say like compare and contrast will always be a question where there's two definitions of an item. And so like if you really are studying for the tests and you use those objective sheets, take them so literally because it'll give you an idea of what the questions already are. The ones that say analyze are much more difficult than the ones that say define. It's something I always tell the students who are, I know it's kind of like gearing toward the test than it is gearing toward the knowledge, but if you're pursuing it anyway, pass it the first time, you know?
right. I mean, the last thing you want to do, and I'll use SANS. I love SANS. SANS is like your golden standard certification, but they cost
Mm-hmm,
$10,000 to attend.
mm-hmm,
I've been told multiple times, like, look, man, like, understand SANS, but like, make sure you're tabbing out your book, understand the processes, make sure you have great notes, because the last thing you want to do is not pass by like 2 or 3% and drop another
mm-hmm.
$1,000 to retake your test. So, and the same thing goes for CompTIA. And CompTIA, that's the one thing that CompTIA certifications are a little bit more affordable. But at the end of the day, I mean, like, why would I want to drop another $300, $400 at a second go
Exactly.
around when I could have just studied a little bit more, understood the nuances of like exactly what you just said, which I honestly wasn't even aware of. I didn't even think about that. I would just kind of look at all those and like, okay, do I know this stuff? Can I talk on it? Yes. And that's ideally how I looked at the objective sheet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's pretty detailed. CompTIA does put a lot of thought into it, so.
So next question for you, Alyssa. So when you think of your career journey of where you've kind of started and where you're at today, what are some of the most defining moments that you would say really stand out? And almost, and I'll say imposter syndrome because everyone gets imposter syndrome. But are there any pieces of that, like those moments where you had that aha moment of like, man, like I belong here. I totally know what I'm talking about. It just really emphasized like I think one of my experiences was when I was working back at the state and I was working on uh, malware response we did for a city. I was able to identify crypto miners within their environment, and I was able to do a full report on it and brief it to their CISO and talk about the things we had to do to like return it back to a safe space. And at the end, I got the good old thumbs up from my boss. Like, hey man, good job. I'm like, I can do this. Like, I know what I'm talking about. Oh my God, this is so cool. I'm doing it. I'm cybering. Oh man,
I'm
I'm
cybering.
cybering. I'm doing it. Do you have like any of those, like I guess like maybe moments or aha times or maybe times you gotten to talk to a mentee or even talking to mentors like that?
I guess there's so many small moments. Yes, going on conference stages is really rewarding, and getting to talk about something and having someone tell you, "Oh, I didn't know that." That's really cool. But there were a lot of just small moments that made me feel like I belong here, or I'm doing what I love. Um, we were kind of talking about before the recording. You gotta like what you do.
Definitely.
So even if you feel like, oh, I'm not as good enough as XYZ, it's not, this isn't a comparison game. It's about what you offer to the table. It's what you can bring, and everyone brings something different. So I remember, I think the biggest satisfaction I got was, even though my work at the moment was to do pen testing on a large venue, I got to then, because security catches you a couple times, they know your face, they don't like you. Okay, that your face is on some group chat somewhere, they'll find you.
There's a
They don't
meme.
like you.
There's memes on like I think even other some of our red teamers like if you see this man or woman like
Yeah,
call the local pound. They somehow escaped. I'm
exactly.
like, dang, like the red team's not that bad, guys. They're like they DOSed us for 2 days. I'm like, oh, those bastards.
Yeah, but I got to train about 30 other students to do the same thing. I had a bunch of undergrad assistants from my professor, who was my chair, also taught a class, and I got to use his students in my work.
Oh, cool.
And this isn't an accomplishment of mine. I'm not going to name drop who she is, because I don't know if she'd be cool with that. But she got her very first breach, like physical breach, at this event. She did really well. Basically, hit every objective. If you can think of
Awesome.
objectives as flags, then there's that. So I was super happy. But she keeps in touch with me to this day, and she's like, still never been caught, still always gotten in. And that's her day job now. Like, physical pen tests are her day job, and I'm just so proud that I could be a part of someone's career like that. And so even though it's her accomplishment and her hard work, I'm like, I helped someone do a thing. And I think that's really what gives me the satisfaction. Like, okay, I should be here. I'm helping, I'm doing something. So yeah.
Well,
If she watches this though, shout out.
you know who you are. Thank
You know
you.
who you
It's
are.
well for those that haven't gotten to see Alissa present. First off, I got this. So I actually met Alissa at CactusCon here in Arizona, and she was in our career village, which is a great. If you ever go to conferences, and you are a somewhat mid-seasoned or even junior, honestly, like anyone in any point of life in their career that's in cybersecurity, goes to the career village and like walks around there for a little bit, or goes to like we had a specifically an area there for like mentoring, resume reviews, mock interviews. You could pretty much find me there most of the days. But there's a few rooms I pivoted to, and I got to catch Alyssa's talk. And you had to remind me what the name of your talk was, because I if
You gotta remember the name of my own talk. I think it was Unconventional Paths in Cybersecurity, I believe was the title.
they're gonna post the videos in about a month, because I'm in another
Okay,
chat
cool.
where they haven't posted them yet. So I'm like, I've been waiting for it because I loved. Regardless, we'll call it how to well what you just said. But her
Yeah.
talk was awesome, and it had some fun little nuances in it, and like a cool little career breakdown of like, hey, see these are jobs in cybersecurity. Pick the path you want to go and learn about it, and just other fun little nuances of just like little things that you can do to kind of better yourself, and just kind of like what to expect in cybersecurity. Like, hey, there's people come up and ask me all the time, or they'll ping me up on LinkedIn, like, hey, I really want to get into cybersecurity. What do I need to do? And the first question I ask them is, what do you want to do? Because there's red teaming, there's GRC, there's compliance, there's blue team, there's purple team, there's DLP, there's back dev, there's DevSecOps. There's so many different things and avenues you can go down. It's hard because I want to make sure I can give you the right resources and kind of point you in the right direction, or point you toward another mentor. Like, hey, you know what? You want to be a web like application pen tester. I don't really do that. I can tell you how to defend it, but I might kick you off to someone else down my pipeline in my network saying, hey, is anyone free to take a mentee that wants to get into X path of cybersecurity? I'm in the hunt right now for anyone that does GRC, because I've had a few folks that have hit me up. I want to be a GRC analyst. I'm like, that's awesome. I'm not a GRC analyst though, but let me see if I can find you the right point of contact to get that information from. But But long story short is if you ever get to see Alissa in any of her presentations or any of her videos, even once they post on YouTube, you got to check them out because they're excellent content. And it's, I think, a great other just tool that when you're trying to figure out this and navigate this path of breaking into cyber, getting to see everyone's different kind of point of view and how they went about this process is huge in this industry.
I really appreciate you saying that. The only thing I would like to add is that wherever you start, I promise you that's not where you're going to end. You are not going to do the same thing in cybersecurity because one, the needs change in the industry so much.
Definitely.
There are fields in cybersecurity that exist today that didn't exist 5 years ago. So always
AI
be
engineer
prepared to change.
prompting. Yeah. It's
Exactly. Exactly. Well, not only that, there's just so much more communication styles for attacks. So now you have people that just specialize in like threat hunting over social media. You have people, obviously, like you said, that do AI. Just expect to change, and you'll probably want to, or the market will demand it, or something else. It's wherever you start, just take that as here's what I'm going to learn right now, and I'm going to be the best I can be at this moment, and maybe it'll lead me somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. I always tell people when you're applying for a new role, be the best candidate. Make sure your resume and everything lines up with the role you're applying to. Make sure you're doing your research on the company. Make sure you understand maybe what tools they're using and do like a quick refresher or try hack me or hack the box room on Splunk or a SIM or an EDR. And kind of goes in maybe a good pivot to my next question is when do you have a favorite training method, I guess, or maybe training platform that you like to kind of use or leverage when it comes to keeping up to date with your skills and stuff that you're currently using?
Yeah. Um, the best way I can describe it is it's very chaotic. I I go with what interests me at the time. So finding your social media of choice is actually super important. There's a lot of hot takes about different social media platforms, and I won't mention them here. But mine, the one I really like Mastodon.
Okay.
And InfoSec Exchange is how I keep up on news, different people, different concepts. And that'll lead you to here's this training on YouTube, or here's this whole blog or book that I wrote. And it's just, oh, that interests me right now. I'm going to dive into that. And then I see something else sparkly and I go there. I follow my heart.
Silver ball syndrome. Yep, I'm right there with you sometimes. I doom scroll. I don't know if you're a doom scroller, like Reddit, Stack Overflow, GitHub. I will
Mm-hmm.
sometimes pivot to that alone and like look for prompts, look for something I'm trying to accomplish, like similar to not. And you can probably agree with me on this, Alissa, and let me know if I'm wrong, please. I would say 9 times out of 10, if not like 9.5, if you're trying to accomplish something, if you're trying to automate something, if you're trying to look for a script, if you're trying to look for how to say something or change up your resume to rectify or change a position that meets a bullet for a resume, it has probably already been written on GitHub, Stack
Mm-hmm.
Overflow, Google,
Yep.
YouTube. Uh, Name your social media platform of where you want to do some Google dorking and searching, and you can
Yep.
probably find said thing. As you mentioned, AI is huge right now. You have Gemini, DeepSeek, you have ChatGPT, and a plethora of other ones, and even some you can build on your own for chatbots
Mm-hmm.
on whatever data you want to feed it, and then make that chatbot an SME and pick your poison. So,
Exactly.
and exactly that. And I think, like you said, like I think jobs are pivoting so I don't want to say quickly, but it's just like you said, like you're not going to start and end in a position. It's very unheard of, I would
Mm-hmm.
say. Can it happen? Yes, but your boss is going to come to you like, hey, we need to learn cloud, so I need you to start learning cloud and get like your Cloud Plus or cloud API hacking, and I need you to understand how to do cloud detections and security and work inside Azure or Microsoft or AWS. And that's what kind of then begins your pivot, maybe where you initially start, and possibly your next kind of pipe where, wow, I really like this, or wow, I really don't like this, and then you have to go back up a little bit and find another path.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I think those are huge.
Absolutely. There are really good training platforms out there. When I make recommendations to people, shout out to Try Hack Me. They also support the community. Try Hack Me is really good about meeting with community sponsorship and saying, hey, you're running this conference. Let's give or like in kind to this conference, or let's help people. Let's give discounts. No Starch Press is also super helpful in the community. There are so many platforms out there, but I really respect the ones that give back.
That was
Um,
no starch press.
No Starch Press is a book publisher.
Oh,
You've
okay.
you've probably run into some of their books. They have two different basically cover arts for all of their books. So if you see it, you'll recognize it.
Okay.
But the art of practical malware analysis got me through so much. I will say the book and its material labs are a little bit out of date now because I think it was published in the 2010s ish.
Okay. And that's
But
fair. That's understandable.
yeah, but incredible book, incredibly written, and everything they put out is gold. So
Awesome.
if you're a book person, they've got PDF, EPUB, and like physical books, obviously. So I recommend Try Hack Me, Hack the Box, anything from No Starch Press. But those are really like self-learning materials. There are good guided programs as well. There are boot camps you can join. I work with a boot camp. Um, so I am biased in that way. You'll see people have different opinions on boot camps.
Yeah, of course.
But one thing I can say is it does provide the hand holding some people need. Some people
Yes.
aren't disciplined self learners, or they just have a lot going on and need someone to go, "You okay?" So pick your poison. There's a lot out there, a lot of different price points or free.
Yep.
If you want to learn it, you can.
100%. If you have the drive to pivot into a new role, and like if you have to understand Python, like I know Python, am I a SME coder that can go and create a cool GUI application at the drop of a hat? Absolutely not. But can I pick up a detection within my current environment of like a SOC alert and like, oh, this is Python, or oh, this is C++, or oh, this is this specific code, or this is basic C4, and then I can pivot from there or do my research? Absolutely. And I think just like you said, like boot camps, I think are a pro and con. I think 100%. I'm very much a hands-on learner, so it's like I can't just pull up a book or read it. I have to be inside a lab. I have to be fingers on keys. I have to make mistakes. Why isn't this working? I then spend another hour figuring out I just added 2 extra periods where I shouldn't have somewhere, and then go back in the line to fix it. And so, but I do see I have both positive and negative stories with people doing boot camps. But I think if it's lining up with what you want to do, I know a lot of like I know AWS has a bunch of boot camps that will do like from butt to seat. They get you through that boot camp, and then you immediately will find a job after with AWS.
Mm-hmm.
Those are some that I can kind of get behind. I know there's a few other ones, like you'll see random ones sometimes that pop up on LinkedIn, like do this boot camp and guarantee you'll find a job within 6 months. Those ones kind of I juggle sometimes. I'm like, maybe you will, maybe you won't. I think there's a lot of things that come into factor with that: resume, experience, how well you can talk on it, how well you can interview. I know a lot of people, they look great on paper, but unfortunately, like even myself, I'm not the strongest on technical interviews. And I know that's my weakness. So when I find out I have to do a technical interview, I study. I make a cheat sheet. I run labs. I throw up some VMs. I'll do some basic enumeration. I'll write up some reports, and I make sure I can like, okay, it's good, it's fresh. I feel good, warm and fuzzy. There's other people that they can close their eyes and pass an interview in their sleep, and I applaud those people. But that's not me. So
Yeah. If you are going to look for a boot camp, there are definitely many different ones. Pick any that have a career center, a career focused one. And
yes,
if you are going to drop the money, do the ones with the guarantee on them. Because if you don't get the job, then you don't have the income to pay for that boot camp. So I would strongly recommend ones that put the money where their mouth is and are willing
that's
to say,
awesome.
we'll get you a job in 6 months. Ones with mentors, especially. Do not go on the ones that are all self-paced, because then what's the difference between that and buying the No Starch Press book?
Yeah,
Um,
right.
so it really does depend. But yeah, there are a lot of choices out there. I think it's just finding what's right for you and making comparisons. Maybe ask your friends what they've done. But everyone's going to give you a different opinion.
No, definitely. And I think that's honestly a really strong point too. Like go to the ones that guarantee. Like if you find like a random one out of the snow that like, oh yeah, this could happen, but there's no guarantee on it, read fine print. There's usually still stuff when you're filling out the paperwork like, hey, we can't guarantee, or hey, we do guarantee or money back. Just like you said, find those ones, and that way you at least know there's more bang for the buck, and then almost a little bit more promise. So
Hmm.
that's extremely smart and very strong things to look into when it comes to boot camps.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
what are some misconceptions about cybersecurity careers that you'd like to clear up for those just starting out? So, I like to share the story is my first time being a leaving law enforcement, getting into cybersecurity. I got hired with the state of Arizona Department of Homeland Security, long mouthful, and it's my first job. They hired me as a senior security analyst, and I jokingly even told my boss, I'm like, hey, look, if we need to change that to junior or just like information security analyst, totally fine. He's like, no, man, don't worry, man. The titles are just for HR purposes. Like the senior title's fine, man. Don't worry about it. Any advice, I guess, for those just starting out, kind of getting into the field?
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely think for those who are just getting into the field, like kind of what you mentioned, you need to be able to pivot and do all that. But it's so underrated, the soft skills. There's this misconception like, oh, I'm super technical. I can just, stay in CLI all day and never have to talk to anyone. Cybersecurity is a lot of communication. A lot of we mentioned reports, but also like customer facing and like leadership
Yes.
facing. If there's a huge incident that's keeping leadership up at 5 a.m. and you're the person working on it, you bet that CISO is going to be calling you. So you need to be able to talk to people, level with them. I've heard a bunch of different frameworks for how to handle people who are stressed or how to handle even things like interview questions. So if you have to break it down to a technical aspect and give yourself a framework, that's fine. But it's a very human job. It is not you and the mouse and the keyboard all day. So
But these are my best friends. They know exactly what I want to say and where I want to go. No, and I mean, it's funny because a lot of folks I've talked to too, it's even during interview processes, it's like the soft skills. And even when I was over at the Career Village during Cactus Con, I noticed even when it came to doing the mock interview questions, there was like a half page of technical questions, but a lot of the questions on the front and like probably a good 2/3 of them were literally just like almost like just like the personality questions, or like just hey, like explain to me like walk me through the process. If you worked with someone that you guys didn't get along on a project, what would be your process on fixing that or rectifying it, or how would you still get the process done? And i I had this one person like, oh, I just probably wouldn't talk to him, and I just tried to do my best to get the project done. And I'm like, okay, what you could try to say is, because it's just
mhm,
like that. And I explained to her, I'm like, that's a great answer because like you're being honest of what you would do. But I had to kind of explain, I'm like, hey, the point of these questions is this is a soft skill question. This is thinking, okay, what is Andy or Alyssa thinking? Like, hey, what's going to be her process? Like, okay, well, maybe first thing I'm going to do is like talk to the person, say, hey, like, hope everything's okay. Like, is there something I'm doing that's annoying you, or like, do we need to can we talk about this and just see like, if there's maybe like there's something that am I bumping by your seat every time and like not noticing and it's just really annoying you, or am I not commenting out on my code so you don't understand what I'm putting in? And it's having that just one-on-one saying, hey, like that'd probably be step one. I try to talk to the person, just make sure it's, hey, is it just something I'm doing that's upsetting you that I can fix? And maybe that's not the case. Like, oh no, like you're just doing things wrong. Like, oh, well, I apologize. Well, let's see if we can get around this. Like, they just want to see like your thought process and the steps you'd maybe try to take to rectify the situation. And just like, hey, are you going to try to fix it on your own? Are you going to go right to a manager? Are you just going to ignore it and just try to get the process done? But that might not be the answer they want. So I think I did a decent job kind of re-explaining to her. I'm like, well, that's an answer you can go with, but just understand like they're wanting more detail. I think of like the process of how you could maybe fix it and still get your project done. Have you ever kind
yeah,
of had like mentees like giving that kind of advice, or even like some of those like those soft skill questions that when you've talked to them, you're like, you could say that, or
absolutely. So two major things with that. It's okay to be wrong or answer incorrectly in an interview,
yes,
because the thing that you answered wrong might be something the employer is willing to train you on, especially if it's for a very specific discipline or product or service. You're not going to be an expert in that before you're hired. That's unreasonable.
yeah,
But who are you? What are you bringing to the table? The untrainable things, the things they can't change about people's personalities to make them a good fit for the job. So those are the things you really need to work on yourself, because like I said, your employer might be willing to educate you, whether that's just in on the job training or even externally, whether that be SANS courses or anything else. So those things are super important. When I have interviewees struggle, there's something called the STAR method. Are you familiar with it?
I am.
Okay, yeah. So for those who aren't, it's situation, task, action, and result. It's a framework for breaking down a question like that and answering appropriately. It's very comprehensive. It gets the point across. It really shows your thought pattern and how thoughtful you are about it. So if those kind of questions are uncomfortable for you, kind of like I mentioned earlier, find a way to process that information that allow you to answer more clearly instead of just I talked to them. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I've told folks like, hey, practice in front of a mirror, like going through like possible like scenario-based questions, like even on your own. I've jumped on Discord with some other tech buddies and just other friends that are non-technical and say, hey, I'm gonna send you guys some questions. Just I want you guys to read them to me, and I'm gonna answer them. And I want your guys' honest feedback on how I sound. Do I sound just like you said, like, oh yeah, I'd probably just like, do I sound real? Do I sound robotic? Does it sound like a pre-recorded like you have reached the voicemail of Andrew Crotty? Thank you so much and leave a message. It's like no, like I try to be as genuine as possible, and that's what I think I even a lot, and it also goes into I'd say like processing and prepping for interviews.
Mhm.
Like I said, doing your homework, going through baseline scenario questions, going practicing your technical portion of it. Not every interview is going to be a single round. It might be two. Some places I know, like such as Amazon, they do 5 rounds, and they
Mhm.
do. I know a process. It's like it's you're doing like 5 hours, an hour each, with two different people every single time. My
Mhm.
buddy just went through the process, and it's an all day process. But it's like you have to look up like the goals and stuff of the company and what their values are, and then they ask you specific questions that have to align with those companies' values. And sometimes like you can't just wing those off your hip. Like you have to prep for those. You have to write out scenarios. You have to write out explain a time you've had a deadline on a project and you didn't meet that deadline. What did you do and how did you present that to the client, or how did you explain that to your manager? And sometimes they will ask for specific never so I think just like you said, like it's okay to get questions wrong, but I always like to follow up. Like if I don't know something or if I don't understand a process, I'll tell them like, well, you know what, I've never had that experience, but this is
Mhm.
what I would do if I came across that experience. And then in a sense you kind of get to walk through your own scenario of like, well, if I failed to meet a deadline, I would document the times and things we completed. I'd make sure my manager knows. I'd make sure the manager knows like, hey, going to reach out to the client with this email saying, hey, I apologize for not meeting the deadline. This is what we completed. Would you please be all right with us getting X amount more time to complete this task? If
Mhm.
not, we can still work with you and find a better time that this can get completed, and maybe give even a soft estimate like, hey, we're roughly approximately a week out from having this completed. Is that okay to, can you please respond, or we can set up a business call to figure out next steps of what we need to do. And just by doing that, like, okay, well, Andy's never experienced that kind of problem, but he at least gave us a walkthrough on his thoughts of what he would do.
Mhm.
So,
I think that's really wise. There's a lot of different interview prep that people can do. If you are LLM friendly, have the LLM give it a really good prompt, a juicy prompt saying, you are X from Y company, and these are your job titles, and here's my job titles. And it's really good at playing pretend. So if you are LLM friendly, I highly recommend using them for interview questions and prep, whether that be generic technical questions or questions about the company. and
uh,
and don't be afraid to like be passionate about the company you want to work for, because let's be honest, some of these companies you're probably not going to be, but if you find a company that you're really passionate about, feel free to be like, hey, I really like the founder, I think he's super wise and I really like his work, I saw his talk at CypherCon, things like that. Which I think CypherCon is just about to happen again. So I don't know if you're going, but
I'm
I
not,
hope
unfortunately.
if people are going, have fun.
Yeah, I know San Francisco B Sides is also going on, I think, this week or next. I don't want to say it's next week. So, but speaking of cons, do you have a favorite conference that you like to attend when you're not presenting at them?
I do. Rest in peace, Circle City Con. I will always love you. But my favorite conference, hands down, is GERCon. If you've
Okay.
never been to Grand Rapids, Michigan, to
Oh
go
my
to GERCon,
gosh.
it is so amazing. The people who lead it are so funny, so wise. The just the audience there is really great. I've seen some of the best talks ever. In fact, my very first talk was actually at GERCon. So if it comes to favorite talks, it's still my first. The first talk I ever gave is my favorite.
It's so funny you say that. I've been told by like two or three different people that their most favorite conference is at GearCon in Grand Rapids, correct?
Gurkhan, GRR, like the
GRR.
airport code.
Grr.
Yeah.
GRR. Okay,
Yeah,
that's too funny because like they're like, dude, like you have to come to Gurkhan.
yeah.
I'm like, I'm located in Arizona so for me that's a flight all the way to the East Coast off to the knuckle of Michigan. But
Okay, to be fair though, I'm from Indiana and I went to Cactus.
that's true. That's true. Okay, you have me.
Yeah.
I can't argue that one. You have me there.
For those who do participate, they have free beer every year. There's lunch. The restaurants and things in downtown Grand Rapids are super fun. So it's a great place to go if you want to bring a friend just to hang out in the city. It's super cool. Um, and Pink Nightmare is a super amazing person. Egg Drop too. So you gotta check out Gurkhan. It is my absolute favorite.
Awesome. Well, I got two last questions for you, then we'll wrap this up. So, this is a huge thank you first off for coming onto the channel, Alissa. So, your experience and your stories are helping tons of other people looking, kind of breaking into cyber, what they can be doing, things they can look for, or people that are already in the industry and just trying to find that next career hop or pivot to get in what they need to. And we've talked about this multiple times, but like mentorship and having mentors and even reverse mentor, getting to be the mentor to mentees, I think is huge. Like giving back to this industry and this like when people are trying to get into this field, sometimes they don't have mentors they can kind of reach out to. They could be in a field or working like a just like a side job, like there's fries, bashes, stuff like that. Maybe they're working there like as a grocery store stalker or something, and they're like, you know what, I really want to get into cybersecurity. Someone in that store may not really be into cybersecurity, so like they need to find and kind of reach out to those mentors. Which I know a lot of us in this industry, a lot of like John Hammond, Tyler Ramsby, Bailey Marshall, Jennifer Funk, they have a bunch of cool sources and resources to give out. Do you have any mentors that you'd like to give any shout outs to that have helped you kind of get to this journey? Or even like your thoughts on like finding a mentor and even giving back and being a mentor for mentees?
I've had a lot of people help me. I don't want to say any of them were formally my mentor per se. I've had a lot of people mentor me. And those were honestly people that I now call friends. They just were further along in their career. So I wouldn't be so focused on making sure that you have that label to attach to it. You can learn something from anyone. Everyone has something to offer, something new. So feel free to make friends, network. This is a community. This is a place of passionate people,
Definitely.
and I think you're gonna find who you need if you just make those things known. So go to conferences, participate online, even if it's just writing comments on someone's GitHub. They might be willing to help you out. Who knows? Join a Discord, ask questions, and see that community like responds to you. And I think there's a lot of mentorship you can receive without needing that very dedicated title. But if you are going to look for that dedicated title, I would just make sure that you look at that person and you would respect them outside of their career as well. Because there are a lot of people who do a lot of great work, but you want to make sure, like, oh, look, he has a dog and he chooses dog super nice. And or he's really helpful to people in need. Someone I look up to, who's actually a very close friend of mine. I would never call him my mentor, but I super look up to Oddjob. He has his own podcast. I think it's called Glass of OJ. He volunteers at libraries.
Yes.
He did Circle CityCon. Like he's such a wise person, but and I've learned so much from him. But he's my friend. You know what I mean? So you have something to learn from everyone. Just stop and listen.
So funny you say that. Senting you earlier, I totally found that series and I watched some of them. They're awesome videos. I'm like, this is so cool. And
Yeah,
yeah, so give him one more shout out. So I know it's like a glass of OJ, like it's a glass of
yeah.
OJ.
Glass of Zero J is how it would
Yes.
be spelled. Yes, but his name is Oddjob, so he goes by OJ. And he always has a glass of orange juice to drink on show. But he's a super awesome person. I have looked up to a lot of people who no longer participate in the community, so I won't drop their names, but they know who they are. Um, and just you have something to learn from everyone. And in that same turn of coin, you have something to offer everybody. Even if you're just the very first person starting out, if you meet someone who has a ton of experience and you ask them questions like, well, what is AI hallucination? The fact that they have to now respond to you and think about that, they're edifying themselves too. This is a very human field, even though it's about computers.
Yes. Computers are friends, not enemies. Ugh,
Some of them.
yet. Yeah, yet.
Yeah,
Skynet's still planned. We may have passed the date, but there's still
yeah,
opportunities. No,
yeah.
Alissa. Well, we're so glad we got you on the channel. So last but not least, I always like to ask this question kind of for fun. What do you do when you're not cybering and you're not doing computer stuff? What's a fun hobby, or maybe if you're a gamer, if you like to play any video games, kind of Stardew Valley, Baldur's Gate 3, anything that's kind of burning the midnight candle that's it kind of helps you kind of jump off the computer desk and kind of or get back on, but just like on a personal side to game or stuff like that to kind of help you unwind.
Yeah, it's about to be that beautiful time of year. I will admit, winter is not my favorite season. So it's longboarding season. I'm about to
Oh,
replace my grip
cool.
tape. I'm super excited to do that. My friends and I, even though we're in our late 20s and early 30s, are still out there doing it.
Nice.
Um, and yeah, I do play some very casual games. It is not a secret. I still play a lot of RuneScape.
Hell yeah. Hell
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So,
Well, Alissa, I'm so glad we got to get you on the channel. This is so much fun. And everyone that's gotten to stay this long, thanks so much as always. Melissa's a huge thank you. And let me eat some of your time. I'm going to send you some awesome, cool ginger hacker swag. As a
sweet.
huge thank you of just coming on the channel. I always appreciate it. And any last pieces of advice before we sign off?
Hmm. Yeah, don't give up. No matter how discouraged you get, you belong and you have something to bring. Even if you're just day one, I want to get into cybersecurity, I promise you have something to offer someone. Even just telling your grandma, don't click that link, or explaining what a scam is to someone can really help them materially in the world. So you belong, make your place, find your friends. It'll all work out.
Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to episode 6 of Breaking into Cyber. I'll catch you on the next video.